Hello, and welcome to the Nostalgia Podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we watched Jumanji! Jumanji. And this is our first week recording through quarantine, so we are not in the same room. We are looking at each other through FaceTime.
And we look cute.
We do look very cute.
Wondering.
Yeah, so this is definitely going to be a fun test, at least just through the process of seeing how this goes, how it works, because we still want to provide really fun and cool content, even through all of the current pandemic chaos that is consuming the world at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, who knows how long it's going to be like this, but I mean, let's try to maintain some sort of normalcy, I guess, and also like have some fun because the world is terrifying right now, and we hope that everybody is staying so safe.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Staying home, staying safe, staying away from each other. It's the only way we're going to find any sort of semblance of normalcy in the foreseeable months. So, yay us, yay y'all. Let's be safe together.
So, I am a little bit biased with Jumanji because it is one of my favorite movies. Like, I have such a fondness for it growing up, but every time I've gone back to it, I've still loved it, and this time was no different. But I feel like I love it even more now.
Oh, okay.
Looking at it through this lens.
Yeah. I get that. It was really interesting watching this because a lot of like the small nuances and the characters and stuff I forgot existed, and then certain scene will pop up like, I remember this. I remember this scene. I remember that, like something I haven't seen in probably 20-ish years, maybe 19 years. It's been a long time since I saw this movie, but yeah, it really it was a great movie. I think it's actually one of the first memories I have as a human person seeing this in theaters.
So cute.
Because I remember,
Really?
Yeah, I was too young to be in the theater. Like, I was very young, and I remember having to leave when the bats showed up because I was scared.
Oh, no!
Yeah, which is the first fucking scene, kind of. Like, it's the first intro to the movie. It's before the title card, almost, I think. So it was very much like, bats, no, I'm out.
Basically.
I'm 3 years old. I can't do this. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's so cute. Yeah, I'm very excited to do this and to get into it. And I hadn't really watched so I'm sure you guys know, when it comes to remakes and stuff like that, I'm always kind of like, ugh. But I mean, I've been proven wrong, right? Like we've seen on this podcast, but this is one where it's like, what the fuck are you doing? And it's not a remake. They're continuations of the story, which is kind of cool, kind of
which
fun.
Is cool.
But
yeah.
It's very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I was impressed, or to some degree impressed, how they did continue the story from the first to the second. And actually, I guess I didn't realize that it was a continuation, not a retelling. The first time that I watched the remake, or what would be the continuation of the story, I didn't realize that it was just a continuation as opposed to a remake. But that falls still under our premise for the podcast. So boom, 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 boom.
Fuck yeah, it does. That's why we are loose with our description.
Because it can include
so we have more content.
Yeah.
All of the things.
Oh my gosh.
Man, can you wait until we run out of material? Which Hollywood, we're never going to do that because Hollywood just wants us to be a thing.
Oh yeah.
But then we start doing the Fast and the Furious series, right? And shit like that. And then we do I don't know, we get into sequel territory. Okay, cool. We did a Transformers episode, but now it's going to be Transformers 2 and 3 and blah, blah, blah. Oh, man. Yeah.
You did say Fast and the Furious, and legit though, I would love to do Fast and the Furious because that is a very fun franchise that I feel like by the 8th movie really understood what it was trying to do. And I think the newest trailer I didn't just see, but relatively recently saw, and it is a mess. And I'm like, oh, they know what movie they're making now. They are finally this is silly. You know it's silly. We know it's silly. Just go off. Go all the way silly. And they did, and I'm very thankful for that. That somebody was like, you know what? And they were like, okay.
I think I've only watched like the first and maybe the second one, and then after, like, I mean, I was too stuck in my like space operas and sci-fi shows. But yeah, I'd be down.
Yeah, that would be super fun.
Let's do it.
Anyways,
Okay.
we should talk about Jumanji instead of Fast and Furious.
Okay. All right, let's do this.
First episode, here we go.
In 1969 New Hampshire, a young Alan Parrish is disgruntled and, while exploring his autonomy, bullied by his peers and family. One day, he hears the drums of Jumanji calling, and after answering, gets sucked into the game and is presumed dead. 26 years later, a grief-stricken Judy and Peter Shepard move into the Parrish house with their aunt, Nora.
One morning, they also hear the drums of Jumanji calling, and like Alan before them, they begin to play the game. Wild shit happens, grown-up Alan Parrish comes back, and in order to end the game and the chaos, they subsequently seek out Sarah Whittle, who was playing the game with Alan when he disappeared. After a stampede, a shootout, and a car full of monkeys, we end up back at the house, which is turned into a rainforest cafe. They beat the game and say, Jumanji! Bow, 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 bow. So I loved rewatching this. This was so fun for me.
This was a treat.
A true treat.
Yes, 1000%. I'm so happy that we watched this, and this movie holds the fuck up. And not only does it hold the fuck up, like, it is kind of like the gold standard for like how to talk about your feelings and like be yes and like, you know, it's okay for people to feel things. And I don't know, I was just blown away by like this whole fucking movie is about trauma and grief and how to deal with those and how to heal from those, and how like you need other people and other things to like rely on, and the children are like almost like coping mechanisms and things like that for that, you know. And then with that take, and then at the end, like him finding them and inviting them back into his life, even though he's good, and like this movie is fucking beautiful, and everything about it is wonderful.
I
can't.
I also just love the cast. Like off the bat, Patricia Clarkson, who plays his mom, young Alan Parrish's mom, love her. Like her face work in that scene when he's at the dinner I'm just like, yes, love Patricia Clarkson, give it up. I do want to say off the bat that Kirsten Dunst is queer canon. Kirsten Dunst in Jumanji is queer canon. That's it. She was perfect. She was, I like her lying to the realtor. I was like, yes. Her one-liner about like, we should stay at a Motel 6. I'm like, yes. She just like, she was absolutely perfect. Like, I can't even. Oh, and then when they see the bats, she's like, well, now I know why you found the house so cheap or whatever. Like, she's such a little asshole. And I'm like, this is gay media. This is gay media. Kirsten Dunst just really giving it all she's got. And she's like 12. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, she's just like, yeah, whatever, like the whole time. And I'm so glad that she got this role, because like they, like apparently Scarlett Johansson also tried out for this role when she was a kid. So it could have.
What?
Yeah, isn't that wild? I didn't even know that she was acting as a child.
Neither
I don't know. I remember texting you and I was like, holy shit, Kirsten Dunst is in this movie, because I totally fucking forgot. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, holy fuck. But like, okay, if we're diving into her character first, her character, like you said, is like kind of an asshole to everybody, but when you look at how she treats her brother and the other people that she decides to let into her life, right? Because the people that she lies to and the people that she's like kind of more of an asshole to are outsiders, people that she doesn't want in her inner circle.
Yes.
But the care that she takes for her brother, right? Where she's like, she's laying in bed with him and she's like, she's trying to like be there for him and say like, hey, I believe you. Hey, it's okay. Like, hey, like feel your feelings. It's fine. This is what's gonna happen. And like I was just like like she is just very yes and she's like, I believe you, I like, you know, I hear you, you're valid. Like, and holy shit, like 1995, really? This is a character that was written as a fucking 12-year-old. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, honestly, that's why I also like, because it's very much like like you were saying, it's this character who's dealt with trauma, like the passing of her parents. Like she's dealing with that. It's a fresh thing. It's current. But they're not trying to go so overt with the character, or she's not trying to go so overt with the character as to be like, I'm mad because my parents are dead. It is such a subtlety of like that, the care she gives for those she's close with, the subtle performance of that, and then like her kind of being a low-key asshole to everybody else. I was like, they're not trying to rub this storyline in our face. They're not trying to be super overt with it. It was one of those really subtle characteristics within the story, within her character specifically, that I was like, so good. It was so good.
Yeah, well, and she also, like I said, like she just believes her brother. She believes him, and she does her best to help him communicate. And like, so like, yes, she's going through this grief and everything herself, but she's also trying to help the people that she's decided are allowed in her inner circle in her life. Right. Mm-hmm. And like the same thing with Peter too, because he just takes a fucking vow of silence. He's like, fuck this. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't want to talk about your feelings. I don't want to except for his sister. Right. So when he starts talking to Alan, that's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And the scene where they go to his dad's grave, right? Because they're like, oh, the Parrish family, they're over on this street now. And it's like the fucking grave. That's fucked up. But like seeing Peter as a young boy comforting this grown ass man, and Robin Williams does such a fucking great job too of like, even though he's a grown ass man, you believe that he's still Peter's age, right?
Yeah.
That is who he is inside. And so it's so interesting how they're so kind to younger people in a way that a lot of film isn't, where they have this tool set to be able to express these big, giant, complex feelings and distill them in a way that like adults have a hard time doing, right? Like that's why Steven Universe and stuff like that is so impactful, right? Because they take these big giant things and just like distill it to like one or two sentences, and you're like, woof, okay, like, and just being able to show that and the weight of that scene without being like too overt or too like on the nose or anything. It was just super subtle, and and especially like a lot of like film that we get about like kids that are grieving, or about just kids in general. They're fucking monsters, and they're monsters to each other. But in this, even through all of the shit that they go through and everything, the brother and sister don't fight once.
No, they're on each other's team the entire time.
Yeah, and I love that. Like that was so cool, especially again, like going back to what this whole thing is about, like relying and trusting in other people in order to move forward and in order to be able to feel these feelings and navigate these complex emotions surrounding things like trauma and grief. And in a lot of ways, like that's what Jumanji represents in itself too, right? Is the event, or is the catalyst, whatever caused that trauma. And that's why the drums play, right? And then they get sucked into their trauma or their traumatic experience. And when you've gone through something that's really hard and that's really tough and that really fucking shakes you to your core, it's so hard to get out of it. And you need other people to get out of it. And
Are you essentially saying you need teammates to help you through trauma, to help you through the tough times?
Yeah.
Like, so in the way that there's different players within the game itself representing some sort of traumatic thing, the not necessarily reliance, but the help of people close to you impact that game in a way that helps you get to the end of it and to finish it, right?
Well, yeah,
to, like,
and
process.
And when you don't actually deal with it, and you just you're just kind of still there, it hurts the other people around you too. Look at what Sarah went through, and look at her trauma, and look at that traumatic event that happened to Alan fucked her up, in a way that she has just like been almost re-traumatized or traumatized in a different way by all of these therapists and all these people that don't believe her and don't believe what she's feeling or what happened, like the experience itself. And then these kids who are like innocent bystanders get swept up in it too. Like when you don't deal with your trauma and when you live in your trauma, it really can be really damaging to people that you never even thought to consider.
Truly. Yeah. I mean, 100%. I will say there was one moment within that conversation with Sarah Whittle and Alan Parrish when they find her initially and they ask her to play the game. She's like, no, I'm not doing that. I spent so many years pretending that game isn't real. Like, you can't just show up here and rebirth all of these same feelings and rebirth all of this trauma. You can't do that to me. I've worked so hard to get where I'm at. When they sit down and she's like, I'm not playing. And he's like, okay, give me the dice. And she goes to give him the dice and he moves his hand out of the way. So she makes a roll. I was like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's just manipulation and abuse. And then she's like, why would you do that, with like almost teary-eyed? And he's like, I've been to the jungle, Sarah. You'll get used to it. I'm like, no.
But again, right? That's somebody
actually
like bringing an unwilling participant into this trauma, right?
Yes.
Like, in the confines of this film, she has to play the game in order for them to end it and all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, when you deal with trauma and stuff, you can, like, there's like some people in my life have like gone through like the thing where they like, not like a 12-step program or something, but where they have to like apologize to everybody that they ever fucked over and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, I'm sorry. Everything's cool now, right? And I'm like, no, everything is not cool. That's great, but I don't have to accept your apology, you know, because like, especially when it's like something like just so deep-seated and everything, like, are you doing this for me because I need to hear it, or are you doing this to clear your conscience?
Yeah, and also you can't force your timeline onto somebody else's. You can't expect somebody to process the same way or at the same pace. That's unrealistic, and it's also just shitty to force somebody into that situation just because you're ready doesn't mean that they're ready.
Right.
Like, even in this moment where, yes, Sarah and Alan's trauma is a shared trauma to a certain extent, it's the same event, that doesn't mean that they have to process it in the same way. So him, in that way, like you were saying, people being like, here's my apology, so we should squash it or it's done. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Mm-hmm. So he's like, yeah, well, I did this, so like you'll get used to it. You'll get over it. We'll do this together. She's like, fuck you, no. I've dealt with this a different way. Just because you've gone through this post event, I've done it a completely different way, and I'm still processing it to this day. So don't force me to come to any sort of conclusion or to wrap up the growth that I've made into a neat little thing just because you don't want to have a talk about what that means in this moment. You know, I think the pressure of like, we have to beat this game or else we'll die, like adds an element of like, we don't have much time because like that's just the premise of the movie. But
right,
looking at it through the lens of processing trauma or struggling with PTSD in that way, that scene, it was just like such a stark dichotomy, reflection of like somebody who is forcing somebody to be okay in a negative way, right?
Yeah, well, and she, like, you know, she's trying to like cope. She calls her therapist because she's so fucked up over this, you know, because she spent so much time trying to distance herself from this, and now she's not allowed to at all. You know, she's kind of like, she has this line where she's like, nobody believed me and I was all alone.
Yeah.
And like, she's kind of like, that's great that you're here, but I can't right now. And like, and that's something that they kind of like don't explore and that they just kind of gloss over. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they didn't have time to go over it, and maybe they didn't know necessarily how to go over it because it's the 90s and mental health is hard.
Yeah.
to represent correctly and represent solutions.
Yeah.
But moving past that, it's like going again on like the shared trauma and grief and everything. It's like they were all kind of trying to roll with the punches and trying to do what they know is right.
Yeah.
Or not right, but what they think is right and what they think is best for each other, because like things do get harder before they get easier. And and on, if you take it from like the viewpoint of like they're having to save each other and having to work through it and having to push each other to be better, that was not the way that he should have tried to say like, or can communicate like, hey, we need to do this. And I understand that this is hard and stuff like that by tricking her. That was fucked.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it was out of his character though, because he hasn't really had any human contact except for like his Nega daddy that's in Nega Jungle Daddy, right?
Yeah.
So for him, I think that makes sense because I don't think Alan really understood, or again, was still understanding that this is all his trauma and he's forcing everybody onto that. He's still in survival mode. And, you know, when you're dealing with something traumatic, you are in survival mode. And it shows later on too, when Alan is talking to Peter and he's kind of like yelling at him.
Yes. I was just going to say, I was going to bring this exact thing up. I loved this scene.
Yeah.
100%.
And he's just like, and like you kind of like, you see like grown up like version of Alan, and he's like, wait, oh my god, I'm so sorry. And the reason that he says sorry to Peter is because he sees himself in the young boy, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas he never really apologizes to Sarah in that same way because he doesn't see himself in her.
Yeah, he sees a relationship that he's familiar with, which was the relationship he had with his father. And it's one of the only, it's the last thing that he said to his father, right? Like, he's been gone this whole time. So it's something that he's familiar with, even though he can't recognize, like you said, his relationship with Sarah in this way to apologize and to say, like, I fucked up. You're seeing growth from a moment of him being manipulative and shitty and not really knowing how to process or understanding that somebody else's process is different. But him in the middle, like, he's like, I warned you about this, Peter, but no, you wanted to play the game. What are you crying? No, keep your chin up. Crying never helped anybody do anything. You have a problem. You have to face it like a man. And then he stops and then like kind of checks himself for a moment. He's like, you know what? It's okay to cry. I'm sorry I said that. He's like owning, he's seeing himself reflected in the actions of his father and sort of doing this cyclical traumatic thing where being like, don't be a sissy, you're not supposed to cry, and being like, actually, no, you should cry. Please, I apologize for what I said. Yeah, you know what? I'm sorry. Cry. You feel your feelings. It's okay. It's okay to feel. It's okay to process. So you're seeing him in that moment sort of understand that people process things differently. Mm-hmm. And I like that growth happened, although I wish, like you said, we got a moment between him and Sarah where he does acknowledge that her process is different and that what he did was shitty, right? Like, we never get that moment.
I feel like the closest thing we get to that moment is them kind of yelling at each other where he's like, well, you're probably with that guy still, right? Like, where's he? Aren't you guys have babies and stuff in a car? And she's like, what are you talking about? But again, like, I think it's really important to remember, like, that Alan's growth was stunted because even though he looks like a man, he's just like, he's been by himself in the jungle stewing on all of these bad things or these bad thoughts and like all of this anger and jealousy because he was also kind of a shit before he went into the game world, right?
Yeah.
And so like all of that makes sense. And like I do wish that later on that we got something from Sarah, right? But I think that moment that he has with Peter was like, you know, if he had that talk with him any earlier, would have been very different. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Oh,
but like
100%.
this is where he was starting like, so they do a really good job of showing, I think, the subtle ways that Alan starts to grow and starts to think of other people. Because at first he's like, fucking peace out. I'm not going to have anything to do with y'all. And like these kids are like, no, but we're suffering. And you have to help us with this because like you started this, you know?
Yeah.
You shouldn't have gone down on that construction site. Who the fuck are you? Like, why would you do that?
Well, I also like narratively, they really wrapped up that structure of growth with like, say for instance, that first scene where he's in we'll talk about the Paris shoe plant where they're making the shoes. When he goes there, he sees David Alan Grier, who's working at the shop. He shows him the sneaker, whatever. He leaves the sneaker on the conveyor belt. It gets chopped up. He leaves, even though he sees what's going on and is like, oh, I'm not going to take the fall for this. Then through the growth of the movie, at the end, he's like, oh, and I'm the one who left the sneaker on the conveyor belt. And his dad's like, oh, it's okay, whatever.
The way that they treated that character in particular, I'm really upset at.
Oh, the tokenization of the only black character in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, because, okay, so this is what I wanted to get into. Also, his appearance in the movie, his debut, where we see him first, is at the shoe factory, which is like great. he is the only black actor we're seeing here, apart from a couple background actors.
Yeah.
But not only was the tokenizing of him as the only person of color in these scenes, but also to have him be like this trope about black men and sneakers and stuff, that being like a big point. I was like, you're not only tokenizing this character, but you're also like stereotyping with these things.
Yeah.
It just, I get it's a shoe factory. I get this, but at the same time, chill. We don't need that.
Well, and then throughout like the whole movie too, like he's the comic relief. His car just gets more and more fucked up, you know. And Alan throughout the whole movie continuously lies to him.
Yep.
Like knowing who the fuck he is and everything. And then handcuffs him to the car. Like,
yeah.
Really? Like there was just so many points where like his character was not at all thought out and was the butt of like so many jokes, and also of like he always got like fucked over, like with everything that happened. So yes, like that's cool that at the end he's like, I did it, Dad, it was me. But also like he didn't fucking, before that, like he didn't grow at all. Like that was the easy thing, right? And at any point he could have just like been like, hey, I'm sorry, or hey, this is what's happening, hey, he has the whole thing like, hey, do you trust me? Hey, okay, cool, let's go do this. Fucking handcuff. Like, why? That didn't need to happen. Like,
not at all. And I think at large the movie does that character such a disservice the entire time. He really, like you said, he's the butt of the joke. He's essentially a human pratfall in all of this. He is the one that is relied on for the comic relief in a lot of these scenes, especially like the scenes with him and BB Newirth, which love BB Newirth, want to get into that. But like when he's like driving in the car, the windows all broken, the door's gone. He's like, how can I help you? Like business as usual. So comedy, great. Then when the monsoon happens and the doors fly off and they're on the doors flying down the street and there's like a big alligator and he's like, just like screaming. Again, not a well thought out character, no depth. He is just there to be the comic relief, which is also like, okay, you have the one black actor who has a name in this story. He's also the one you pin all the jokes to. Not a cute look.
Because they also make him look incapable of doing his job well, and they make him look negligent
the entire time,
like because there's the shoe on the conveyor belt.
Yep.
And they try to like frame it in like this lax way, which is also really fucked. And then like the monkeys get his gun and this happens, and it's just like he's way more capable than this. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, this movie fucked David Alan Grier over, his character at least. Like, just it was not a good representation of like who this character was or is. And like you said, they made him so incapable of not just doing his job, but just kind of existing. They made him so it was a bad look. I think that's one of like the only big things that I'm like, this movie really, like, for the most part, it did a good job, again, talking about trauma, but the treatment of characters of color, it was just like, what the fuck? Okay, y'all, like, Jesus.
Those are like really like the main parts where it was like, okay. But like, so much else in this movie was so good.
Well, yeah.
You know,
I do want to point out another scene when they're having that moment where Sarah is coming back into the story as far as like being a part of the game. Alan calls her crazy and she just snaps back. Don't ever call me crazy, Alan. No. Like, so she's initially like the word. She's like, absolutely not. We're not using that language. Don't do it. Don't say that. Not the right thing to say. Stop. And I love that because a lot of movies, especially at this time, I mean, that kind of stuff, they treat mental illness with such lack of empathy, with any lack of like respect. And so for her, this main character to be like, no, we're not using that word. Stop.
Yeah. I also really loved Nora, the aunt that like just adopts the kids. It's just like, all right, fine, let's make it work. And she like takes them to a new city and buys this baller ass house and is like, there's no man around. She's just like, yeah, I got this, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And she's like, cool, kids, I'm going to do it. And she like knows the kid's number too. So like when Judy is like, you know, like, our parents died tragically and a blah, 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 blah. And she's like, they were like accountants or marketing. Yeah. They were in marketing or whatever, right? She has a really good sense of like knowing when to push and pull with the kids and knowing like when they just need to be themselves. Like we never see her like losing her shit or being an asshole or anything. And then we also see her like doing work on herself when she's like in the car when the stampede goes, like she's listening to like some sort of like self-help or self-betterment book, right? And I'm like, fuck yeah, like, all right, cool. Like she's
fantastic.
Yeah, she was great. She should have, I liked her character, even though she was only in it for like just a small amount of time. But she's like super brave, super confident, super sassy, and super just like, I'm going to handle this. Like, and I was like, fuck yeah.
Well, because I also like this. I mean, obviously for me, when this movie came out, this was my first introduction to Bebe Neuwirth, my first introduction to Kristen Stewart. I think maybe even my first introduction to Robin Williams. So like a lot of these people in this movie, I forgot were in it until fairly recently. Bebe Neuwirth is fantastic. She's been in so many good things. She's fucking awesome. So just seeing her in this, I was like, yes, I love Bebe Neuwirth. I love that she's in this. This is really great. One of my notes is just Bebe Neuwirth, we stan. That's it. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say about Kirsten Dunst's character and just the general. I made a joke about like her being queer canon, but I think her character as being sort of this kind of performative, but also the fact that she just like lies a lot and like makes shit up apart from those close to her. There's an element of like being a young queer person having to like hide and perform for people and like making shit up on the fly and just like going with it that like I feel like a lot of young queer folks resonated with when watching her, where like she's making shit up to the realtor. She's like quick-witted. She's fast. She can make something up on the drop of a hat. Even when the stampede happens and the phone rings and it's Nora and she's like, what's happening? What's going on over there? She's like, British accent, immediate. I'm sorry, dear, you have the wrong number, and like hangs up and then leaves. I'm like, this is exactly that. There's like this level of social performance that she's exhibiting that like I feel like would resonate with a lot of young queer people in a way where you're having to hide again. You're not able to be honest or be forthcoming or earnest in a lot of ways because you don't want to be outed or you don't want to be hurt by the general public. So for her, at least for me, a lot of my like, yes, her in this movie, boom, 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 boom. It was those characteristics that resonated with me the most. It's that like very fun, very sharp, performative closet existence.
Yeah, well, and that also like speaks true because like there's a lot of almost every time that we see her like stretch the truth or lie or you know like it's because of like something having to do with like self-preservation or like you know protecting yourself from other people. So like each time we see her employ that tactic, it's because of she's trying to protect somebody, she's trying to protect herself, she's trying to make things a little bit less shitty, right? Mm-hmm. And the other one does this too, where something that is otherwise characterized as like a weakness or like, you know, a negative trait actually becomes a strength and is something that is helpful in the long run.
Yeah, 100%.
She was great. I loved her.
She was fucking fantastic the whole time.
Also, Peter, like, okay, since we're talking about cheating, let's talk about Peter and how self-aware he is. Like both of these kids for sure are super self-aware of like of themselves, of their feelings, of how other people perceive them, right? For like a 8 and 12-year-old, right? Like I had no idea about any of this shit, right? But like Peter is like he comforts Alan and he's just like, hey, it's okay to grieve, it's okay to be sad, you know, in that graveyard scene, right?
Yeah.
And then he also is like, hey, it's okay to be afraid. And like because Alan's a coward even as a fucking grown adult, he's like, I'm not afraid, blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah, whatever, like it's fucking chill, you could be afraid. And like then uses reverse psychology on fucking Alan, like, and I was just like, oh my god, yes. And he like calls it out too. He's like, yeah, it's reverse psychology, Dad used to do it to me all the time. And I'm like, fucking kid, like, all right, cool. And like also he's again, like, so there's so much kindness in the world, right? Like the sibling relationship we've discussed, like there's the old man that's squatting at the pair of shoe factory that literally gives Alan clothes, right? It's just like, furthering that like people that don't usually have a lot are the ones to help other people out that need it, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, the only time that Peter actually tries to like cheat, not even like really thinking that it's cheating or anything, is to try to end other people's suffering. And then he's turned into a monkey, right? So there's like something's happening and he just like tries to drop the dice on the 12 because he's like, I can end this right now.
Yeah.
Everybody can be okay if I just do this. And he wants everybody to be okay. And he wants everybody to be happy and to just chill and accept their feelings and just be fine.
Yeah, no, I loved his groundedness the entire time. Just again, like him owning his feelings, him owning his, I guess, autonomy. Because especially for children that age, a lot of kids, and rightfully so, there's like kids are still growing, don't necessarily own their autonomy in such a way. But Peter is just like dripping with confidence. You know?
Well, and it's like so interesting too, because like this film just really highlights that people deal with trauma and grief and everything in different ways and at different times and different speeds. So even though he's seeming to handle it a little bit better, he's still in it. And he still heard the call of the drums, you know, which is like also showing that there isn't like a target for trauma or for things like that, right? It can happen to anybody, anywhere, at any time.
So that it's not a highlighted trait or the only trait of a character. It's something that is sort of encompassed and sort of a part of the overall existence and not necessarily something that needs to be highlighted or shouted out.
Yeah, exactly.
I did also want to, there was a, towards the end when they're in the Rainforest Cafe, and the monsoon happens, Sarah and Alan are about to kiss, and Sarah's like, Alan, you wrestled that alligator for me. And she goes in for the kiss, and he pulls back and says, it was a crocodile. Alligators have that little fringe. And I was like, that is the biggest well actually I've ever heard. Well actually, like by a fucking straight man to just jump in on a woman. Like, she's like, alligator. He's like, well, actually, it's a crocodile. Like, oh my God, shut up.
Just make out with her.
Yeah, I just thought that
man.
I thought that was very fun and funny and just like, oh, Jesus, this is a mess.
There were like a lot of moments like that where the cop was like, does he always act like this? And she's like, he's vegetarian. And you're like, what? Like, wait a second, what's going on?
Like, what is happening? Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, this film was fucking awesome on those little one-liners. It made me so happy. Can we talk about Daddy Parrish and Van Pelt?
Oh, yeah.
When I was a kid, I didn't realize they were the same person.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
But I thought, I think it's really interesting because, like, Van Pelt kind of, like, he's essentially how children view their fathers, or Alan specifically in this one. But, like, how he's, like, something to be feared, and he kind of is the trauma, or is like a huge cause of like the trauma from his son, because like then it all like, you know, it all starts when his dad is all pissed off at him, and then it ends by like him like finally confronting his dad and not running anymore, right? Or like Van Pelt, who is his dad.
Yeah, so there's this idea of like running away from the thing most feared, which in the game version of this character is the manifestation of his dad as a hunter who is then hunting the player. So you're literally running from the thing most feared, which will kill you, which is a man with a gun whose only goal is to kill you. So that being his dad, being this idea of like, as Alan Parrish is going through the process of understanding and allowing yourself to feel and empathize and process, I think he's starting to see that his own dad has obvious problems and probably some residual trauma or inherited trauma, like some cyclical shit that he's not dealing with. And so through that process is able to confront the thing most feared for him, which is his dad. And at which point he's able to say, I'm sorry, but also let's talk. Right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that too just has to do with like toxic masculinity and not being allowed to show your emotions and everything too, because we have that throwaway line, well, Alan Parrish's dad really loved him and he spent every dime, and the shoe factory went under because he was looking for him, and all of this. So, but I think he killed him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because men are never allowed to show emotion, right? Men aren't allowed to show emotion, or like they show love through actions, but because children often like they talk, they talk, and that's how they express their feelings and emotion. Like, they don't see that. So like, I hated, one of the things that I hate about this movie is that Van Pelt, like, that in the end, it's like, oh, but he really did love you, and he really did do all that, and he, like, you know, this is how he acts when you're gone. Like, the only time that it's okay to show emotion or love or, like, care for somebody else as a man is when they're no longer there, or when they really need you, or something like that. But that's just not something that is there every day. And like, clearly his son is having a hard time with that. So rather than, you know, like owning up and talking to him or like figuring something out, he's literally just going to send him off to boarding school so he can maybe like learn why his dad acts like this, and then, you know, and then come back, and then everything will be fine. It's just, it's a dumb trope that I don't like.
Yeah.
That gets employed far too much. It's like, the parents don't care about me, but they really care about you now that you're gone. It's like, well, yeah, but like, why can't you care? Like, so that's supposed to make me feel okay, is that when I'm gone or when something bad happens to me, my parents are going to care and they're going to be there. But why can't they be that for me now?
I think within like this story specifically, having that conversation about male vulnerability being something that is hidden, or something that only exists when there's a problem, or something that's only confronted when there's a problem, like you were saying, I don't like it as a trope, because I'm like, using it as a trope to identify that it exists, sure, but by using it as a trope, you're kind of re-solidifying it as the way to exist and the way to process, because through media we process all this stuff, and it's like, oh, well, if he's doing that, maybe that's how I should do it too, right? So abolishing that is hella important. But in this story, it was just so like, talk to your fucking kid. Like, what I didn't like this sort of hard persona, this very aggressive fronting of masculinity and of aggression and of tying strength to physical strength and not necessarily vulnerable strength or emotion in that way, where it's like, fuck off, just talk to your kid.
Yeah.
Like, if you feel like there's a wedge, talk to your son. Like, ask him what's going on. Ask him how he's feeling. Don't throw, like, well, if I would have known there was a group of them, it would have been a different story. No, fucking don't tell your kid to go get beat up or go fight. Like, figure it out. Like, don't.
To me, the resolution of this,
like, him getting in a fight isn't earning his stripes, you asshole.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off.
To me, like, this whole thing, this whole film was about understanding daddy. Like, at the heart of it, what Alan needed to do in order to finally be free of his trauma and of all, like, you know, and all of this, was to stand up to his dad, who's Van Pelt, whatever, but like, mostly to understand how that works with regards to like, oh, my dad does love me and I know it, so I'm just gonna say okay. Like, it wasn't about like the parents like understanding their kid or bridging that gap or anything. The child had to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and they like, he had to go through this giant wild adventure in order to have that happen, when his parents could have just been like, hey, I love you. This is how I show you I love you, you know, or even just having a conversation like that. But the kid has to do all of the work in understanding his parents.
Yeah.
You know, so this is another film where it's supposed to be about the kid, but it's about understanding adults.
Yeah, it's placing the entire emotional weight on the person with the least experience.
Yeah, like Mary Poppins, right? Oh, your dad goes through a lot. Your dad does this, right? It's like, okay, cool, but I'm 8.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Like, I get that this is something that you want, but like, I'm also 8 years old, and why can't you just talk to me?
Yeah, truly.
So I just have a problem with that.
No, same. I think that is shitty and just blech. also. But again, I think generally this movie was great. It's some of these smaller sort of themes that got overlooked with its treatment of like everything we've discussed thus far, right? Generally, it's great, but there are obviously some problematic elements within it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And again, I fucking love this movie. And these things are just like, you know how like sometimes you're like, there's like a little small thing and you're like hanging out with your friend and you're just kind of talking shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of how I feel this conversation has gone. Like, not because we like, these are the things that we latch onto and stuff like that. But it's like we're exploring these bigger ideas and what they mean. And like in the context of the story and everything.
Yeah.
But that's, again, such a small part of the story. Like I want to talk about how fucking magic Robin Williams is on screen as this character.
Yeah.
When he gets out of the game and he's just running around and he's just so excited and he sees his room and he's fucking stoked.
Yeah.
And then he goes over here and he's fucking stoked. And he's just like, he was so believable as this kid that was just fucking excited to see a toilet. You know?
Yeah, truly.
For the first time in 26 years. Like, there was just so much wonder and magic in the way that he portrayed that character, and the chemistry that he had with the kids too, and how it felt, so much of the film felt like they were on that same level. It felt like they were the same age.
Yeah, truly. That really shined through in this. Just that the relationship with the kids. I do also want to say, before we wrap up this one, when he comes out of the game, Robin Williams does, I put down Robin Williams' legs made me gay. Because Jesus Christ, I just, whoa, it was a lot for me. And I think, I don't know. It was great. It was just a fantastic moment where I think, especially even younger, I recognized like, oh, this is something that I am experiencing and feeling in my life. Great. You know, and watching it again, seeing those scenes, I was like, oh, I remembered these scenes, and oh, I wonder why I remember these scenes so clearly and vividly. Like when he's jumping around and then he jumps up and traps the lion, like that whole scene, I'm like, oh, I know. I remember why I cataloged this. Cool. Yeah, but I thought that was a fun little moment. I feel like is that everything?
For the most part, that was it. I love this movie so much, and I would watch it 1,000 times over.
Dope. Same. I would love to watch this again, and I probably will. In 1996, Jumanji, realizing its relevancy is dwindling, turns itself into a video game and sucks up yet another unsuspecting victim named Alex. 21 years later, a ragtag group of detention goers finds the discarded game in the basement of the school. They start to play the game and are immediately sucked in as well.
Guided by various NPCs and hella video game tropes, they find their way through the Jumanji world looking for the glowy jewel thingy. Along the way, they find Alex, who has taken up residence at the old parish tree fort. They then realize they need to work together to finish the game and make it out alive. After some dance fighting, cake explosions, and a class on flirting, we end up at the final level. They beat the game and say,
Jumanji!
Jumanji! I had not seen this before. You said that you had. I had not. And I was like, fuck this. I don't want to watch this. But I was very conflicted because I love Karen Gillan because I'm a huge Doctor Who fan.
Oh, yeah.
And I just love seeing her in all of the things and getting all of the work. And I think she's gorgeous and she's a fun actor. And I just want to see more of her.
100%. Yeah. She was great in this. And also looking at her credits, I didn't realize everything else she was in because she was also in Guardians, both of them. Yeah, she was great. She's
from Scotland, so she had to do an American accent for this.
Wow.
Which is fun. But yeah, she is great and I love her. And okay, so just overall about this, as a gamer, I've been playing video games since I was like 5 years old. I love how much of this they got right. Like, you could tell that the way that they wrote this and the way that it was paced, and a lot of like the humor and a lot of like they played so well on just so many video game tropes.
Oh yeah.
And of course, Karen Gillan's character, like, I was a little bit pissed when, like, at first the first promos were released, and I was like, really? This is what you're gonna put her in? Like, fucking really? And then, like, watching this, I'm like, oh, okay. And it was like, her character is was directly influenced by Lara Croft from, like, Tomb Raider and stuff.
Oh, hell yeah.
Who, for sure, has, like, you know, like, why is she dressed like this? And I love that they call that out in the game. This film is really aware of problematic video game tropes and showing and highlighting them in a way that I think is really thoughtful for most of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like how there's the one major character, right, who has no weaknesses and is awesome, and all of the side characters, except for maybe like the one badass girl, like, hold them back, right? Like, one of the characters is like, his whole thing is he's a backpack.
Oh yeah.
Right? The supporting character, all he does is fucking hold shit. And then the other one, he just could read a map, right?
Yeah.
And that was really fun for me watching this, and I laughed out loud so much more than I thought I was going to. And it was just delightful.
Yeah, I will say, for the most part, I really did. I was surprised and impressed by this movie. I didn't expect it to be good. I didn't go in with any sort of intention of or expectation of something that was good or fantastic. I thought, I was like, well, it'll probably be fun, probably do well in the box office. I'm sure it'll be fine. I didn't think it was going to be great. And then when I finally saw it, I was like, you know what? I am impressed. This was actually pretty solid, pretty fun, pretty funny. There is one thing that I thought they did a very bad job with trope wise. They relied heavily. So one of the characters who ends up playing the character who is Jack Black. So Jack Black is like the avatar for the girl who ends up playing the game. They relied super heavily on him being the comic relief. And the comic side of that is just the fact that he's feminine. So they used a feminine man to be the butt of the joke the entire time, which I thought was really like, I know it's more commenting on like the pretty girl is now in like the chubby dude, but then that was also a conversation on like not body shaming, but kinda, where it's like, oh, ew, she's like fat now, or like, ew, she's hairy, like, you know what I mean? It felt very,
yeah, by
itself felt very tone deaf in one note, in the sense of like, it was like a very simple laugh. And like the whole time too, with like, because Jack Black's great. I love Jack Black, but the performance of it, like the moments where they're supposed to be kind of earnest, where the character is attracted to the other guy and it's like, oh yeah, or something that like she is responding as his character. That was supposed to be like funny, and it was like a comedic beat. And I'm like, why are we setting all these gay jokes up as the comedic beat? Like, so we're just further, like, we're making the what appears to be queer character the butt of the joke. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're right. Like, him and Fridge were mainly, like, their entire function was to be the stereotype and the butt of the joke and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I 100% exactly what you're saying. I also think that character was, like, the character of Bethany was probably the most well-rounded character in terms of, I feel like that's the only one that really had, like, that, and maybe Martha. Like, the women in this film were more three-dimensional than any of the male characters, for sure.
Yeah.
But her specifically, because I thought that a lot of this film was forcing us to see how harmful our prejudice can be.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that you see is Bethany, who's like the Instagram girl that, like, you know, is like setting up her shot and doing the thing and everything. And it's like framing, the way that it frames the characters is like the very stereotypical, like, you're not going to like this person sucks, like, you know, like, or this is who they are, like, and it's supposed to be funny, or you're supposed to be like, ew, gross, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that what they were going for was that with Jack Black, they get transported in the game, and then that Instagram girl becomes, her avatar is Jack Black. Yeah. So that's where all this comes from. So I think that's kind of where they were going, is things aren't what they seem, because like, And I understand that, but I don't think that it was done in a great way because it was just so overt. Like, one of the best fucking parts of the film is where Bethany, as Jack Black, goes and literally gives her, like, one of her lives to Alex, who's, like, dying and literally going to die. You die in game, you die in real life, right? One of those films. But I think that's so great because when we first see her, like, you just assume that she's super self-centered and you assume that she's all this stuff, right? But she is the only one that, like, when push comes to shove, without even, like, a fraction of thinking, she just goes over and is like, I'm going to do whatever I can to save your life right now. Like, and I love that the person that we think is selfish is actually the most selfless person in this whole thing.
Yes, and I fully agree, and that's what I thought was so. Those are the moments of the movie that I thought were incredibly thoughtful, where Bethany as Jack Black is being selfless and being thoughtful and being empathetic and being considerate and seeing outside of who she is just as a person, or who the movie has set up to show us who this person is, right? Even within that, just the way that the movie was written in those small moments do disservice to those characters by making those moments, like, about sexuality, about penises, like, these moments, like, they're making that more of the punchline and being like, you're not supposed to look, like, whatever. It's just like, because at that moment where, like, she has to pee, but she's in Jack Black's body, so it's like, oh, I've been really curious. And so they're going, and she's like, oh, being very, like, this is really interesting. This is a new thing for me. And the two dudes are just like, don't look. And it's, like, funny, like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to look. It's just like, hey, well, yeah, let's, like, it's just reaffirming these, like, really silly binary structures of what is masculine, what is feminine, what is male, what is female, in a way that I thought was really, for a movie that is so not so thoughtful, but for a movie that is thoughtful, I really think a lot of those comedic beats, they did themselves a disservice in the storytelling of it with these characters by making those moments comedic.
That's super interesting because I was so focused on the female characters or the female presenting characters in this that that went completely over my head. I was just like, because to me, and this could be like a misread now that I'm hearing you say this, like I saw that and it was like, okay, like I didn't even pay attention just because, like, I've worked in a machine shop for a long time and stuff like that. And so I'm so used to hearing those types of comments, which is super shitty, right? But, like, also, I was so focused on Bethany, where she's like, holy shit, I have a dick. Look it, I got this. Like, she's like this new experience, right? Like, those moments where she's talking about, oh, cool, I have this. All right. Wow, this is great. This is easy. This is cool. And then, like, even when she goes back into her normal body, she, like, just grabs her boobs and she's like, oh, okay, I missed you. Like, it's not, like, for her, there's that initial shock of, like, holy shit, I'm a dude and I'm not the way that I want to look, right? But then once she, like, accepts that, she's like, yeah, okay, yes, and. Because that character in themselves is, like, just so wrapped up in their own image and everything, right? So then when they just accept that, like, I have no control over how I look and this is who I am and I'm just going to own it and it's fine, then it's like, then that opens up, like, for all of her character growth and everything, right? And then she's just like, cool, I have this now. Cool, I don't have this. And I kind of liked that she was, like, her in that moment was really nonchalant, just like, oh, wow, this is how this works. Okay, this is here, right? But yeah, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to the response of Fridge and whatever his name is, because I hated those characters. I did not like them at all. And I did not, every time that they were talking, I was just like, fuck these guys. Like, they're boring and they're, like, they felt badly written, like you said, like those, like, little homophobia things, or, like, then when it came to, like, trying to talk out their differences and all this other stuff, and it's like, you didn't do my homework.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay, like, the women had this, like, which I want to talk about later, this beautiful scene about judging each other, right? And then their whole thing is, well, you didn't do my homework right, and you suck, and I'm gonna push you off a cliff now. And I was like, go to bed. Like, you're bad. You
guys are tired. You need to stop. Yeah, I truly, like, I did love Bethany's character and the performance, and the character herself, she was great, and her growth, yes, loved. I hated that the movie tied thematically anything that isn't heteronormative or binary reaffirming or queer in any capacity. Those themes, the only time they're present largely are talked about is when they're talked about as like being a joke, as being like, oh, we're uncomfortable, so like the queer thing is the joke, or the gender queer thing is the joke, or the whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's really, really fucked. And it's like,
well, what made me
so
see that, what made me see that even more is because the first time I saw it, it didn't really resonate with me that way. I was just like, oh, that's fine, like whatever, it's character, blah. I watched the second one, so not like the sequel to this one. I watched separately, not for this, but just in general. Fridge in that one is Jack Black's character, and half of the movie, Jack Black is just doing a black accent, which I was like, I don't. Okay, no, this isn't necessary. We don't have to do this. We don't have, like, it seemed that small moment was like, whoa, this is really hitting me in a real fucked way. And so then knowing like that, and like how a lot of that was really problematic and shitty. I mean, generally it was fine. It wasn't a great movie, but it was fine. This one was much better. But seeing that and then going to this, I was like, oh, the queer character is the butt of the joke. Whereas in that one, like, it gave me a new insight to watching this one, a different lens, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. The gay character is the queer character is the bad, funny thing, or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
that sucks so bad.
Yeah. But overall, I thought it was cool.
I haven't watched the second one. This one, this was my first watch, like I said, and I was just probably, I'm sure I would have picked up on what you're saying a lot more in like a second watch. Fuck, that sucks. That sucks really bad. Because like the character that's the most interesting and has the most growth and all of that, like the dudes in this suck. Like the dudes suck. Like they're just so like one dimensional. And so even like oh God, it's another fucking A name. Alex? Is that his name? Is Alex this time?
Alex is
like,
the Jonas brother, right?
Zac Efron or whoever the fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just like chilling there, and he's like, I'm scared of dying, and you're like, okay, like that's fine. And like his whole thing is like that he's just scared.
He's scared,
like,
but at the
like,
same time, like, look at your fucking treehouse. You have a full oven from a kitchen in your treehouse. You have blenders and shit, which is like, Queen, where did you get those? Stop yourself right now. No, ma'am.
Yeah.
And then it, like his plight is like, oh, my margaritas are so good. They're like, his margaritas are so good. You're like, okay, what is happening? Like,
to me that felt very video game.
Yeah,
right? Like, my superpower is making margaritas and my superpower is drinking margaritas. We're made for each other. And it's like, okay, like I feel like just the dudes did not have they didn't grow at all.
No.
Like the women were so much more interesting. Like, and there was like, I just kept like finding myself while the movie's going on, I was just thinking about other moments that had just happened. Like okay, we'll go to the scene between Bethany and Martha where they're talking about how they keep judging each other. It's like, hey, you judge me. And it's like, look, I don't hate you. Like, Bethany was like, she was talking about something and Martha kind of like put her down and she's like, hey, look, I'm allowed to have feelings.
Yeah.
Like, I'm allowed to, my feelings are valid, even if you don't see that. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then they were just like, look, I don't hate you. I don't hate you either. Oh, okay, why are we talking like this? And then they like offered actual criticism of each other where it's like, you are in a princess bubble and everybody treats you like a princess, like, you know, or this. And she's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, and she's like, yeah, so like the way that you view the world is skewed because that's not how everybody's treated. And she's like, wow. Yeah, all right. And then, like, without skip, like, just yes and, right? Bethany was very fucking yes and in this movie. And then she tells Martha, well, like, you're super judgy because of other people because you don't want other people to decide they don't like you first. And she's like, yeah, that's fair. That's valid. And so they actually talked about their feelings, but not in that, like, that way where, like, you know, women will talk about, like, dudes or they'll talk about this. They, like, actually got down to the root and they're like, hey, this. Oh, okay. I got you. I see you. And it's like, I really liked that. And so I found myself like thinking about that, how like because in a lot of ways, like in that scene, Bethany was like talking, cause like I was also like, while Bethany's like, oh God, no cell phone reception service, whatever she said. like, I was like, oh God, please, right? And then like she straight up calls out Martha for saying that, and in the same way she's calling out the audience for having this idea of her and who she is and it, like her value based on her stereotype. And she's like, hey, you don't get to do that because I am valid. I have feelings. I am a person. And I think that, like, at first I was like, great, like everybody's a stereotype. And then the further that we got into the movie, I was like, oh yeah, I mean, at least with the women's characters, right? Because they were just so good. It was just like, yeah, you're right. Even if you're a stereotype, you're still a person.
There's human existence outside of exterior perception. There's an existence outside of a perception of the performance of like existing when people see you and they perceive you and they think of you in X, Y, or Z based on other people they've seen who are X, Y, and Z. That's just perception. That's not fact. That's not factual. It's ridding itself of stereotype, ridding itself of expectation based upon prejudged or prejudicial, I guess, notions or thoughts, right? So yeah, and I agree with you. I thought that they did a really good job, especially with their relationship, the two of them, in deciphering that and really, I don't know, getting into that more so than they did with Fridge and what's his name? Not Alex. The Rock.
Oh God, somewhere.
Because their whole thing, like you said, it was just like, it was so Spencer.
What a forgettable name.
There we go, Spencer. But yeah, so Spencer and Fridge, like their whole thing was so surface and silly, and like they were friends, but now they're not, and now Fridge feels emasculated because he's smaller, which was a whole nother conversation about like casual character body shaming a little bit, where it's like it felt. There was like a whole thing, and then the joke about his big dick. I was like, okay,
yeah.
Like, so some of that stuff, and
I've seen this here.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm happy I brought this with me. Like, what? Oh, sure, great, cool. But their relationship, how it developed, and like to where they came to some sort of understanding, it didn't feel as real as the other. It felt forced. It didn't feel nuanced. Yeah. It didn't feel true. It just felt very like, yeah, bro. Okay, bro. And
you're like, okay, bro. Like,
yeah,
what?
exactly. Like, yeah, I don't know. It seemed their whole dynamic seemed incredibly silly to me.
Yeah, and it's weird because I felt like they never really grew past that caricature that we were told to think of them as.
Yeah.
You know? So like Spencer is like kind of a germaphobe and he just likes school and stuff, and then a jock that likes to drink because of course the jock likes to drink, right?
Yeah.
And he'll like slam him back. They didn't have any growth, whereas like we were talking about, like Bethany like learning to be selfless and to let go of image and acceptance, right? And then Martha like learning to open up and accept female friendship and accept like her femininity too. Mm-hmm. And like feel powerful in that, and even in like her weaknesses and all of that. Whereas like at the end, like Spencer's big thing is, what if I don't go back? What if I stay like this forever? And I'm like, why? Like, what have you done? Like, I mean, there's been like some cool like fight scenes, I guess, with you, but like what did you learn? You learned nothing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like where is that growth? Where is the growth that we're seeing from other characters? It just wasn't as clearly present or illustrated in the same way.
So now that I'm thinking back on it, I'm like, wow. Because I was going to this conversation and it was like, cool, I love this and I thought this was really fun. And then as we're talking through it, I'm like really that one scene colored my whole view of this whole film. And now it's like looking back at it, I'm like, okay, cool. What else are my notes on? Most of them are on the two women and then how trauma adapts cool. Yeah, like because Jumanji adapts, right? Because it's like, okay, cool. So people aren't doing this thing anymore, but I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to turn it into this thing now.
I loved
like,
that
so I
scene
thought that was pretty cool.
where the physical game
so
of
funny.
Jumanji was like, oh, people like video games now? Cool. Got it. Go to bed, and then in the morning, we'll just figure it out. And then it opens the board, and he's like, video game cartridge, Jumanji. Like, oh, okay. Adapting. We're really going for it.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Great.
Yeah. I also want to talk about something that I really loved. Again, the majority of the growth is with the women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, just like in the last one, once they beat the game, then events go back to when the very first person played the game. So, like Robin Williams was a kid again and got to live his whole life and the whole thing. Then in this one, the same thing happened, right? And we don't realize that when the kids are, or the teenagers are walking up to Alex's house, and he's an older man now with a family and stuff. And they zoom in on Bethany, right? Because it's like, oh, how she's going to feel. And she was just like, dude, this is awesome. I'm so happy for you. You have a family. You're here. You're doing it. Like, and like, because they had a moment, like, you know, I feel like Hollywood, like 25 years ago, might have done the gross thing, right? But like, it was just like, yeah, no, like, you know, thanks. I'm glad that you guys are like safe and everything's chill. I named my daughter after the person that saved my life, which like, all right, cool. But I'm glad. Part of me was like, oh no, they're not going to do this. Oh no, she's not going to be with her dad. Like, oh, gross. And then she wasn't. And I was like, cool. And they did, I feel like the way that was handled. Did you watch Stranger Things season 3 at all?
Yeah.
So, one of the things I fucking loved about that season was they're setting up this whole romance between the Scoops Ahoy people, right? And at the end, the way that they handle it, where they're just like, hey, no, I'm not into you because I'm gay.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, like he takes a second to process, like, oh, cool, fucking awesome. And without skipping a beat, they're right back to best friends and they're doing all the shit together and everything. And I felt like that's kind of how that scene played out in my head, like watching this. And I love that there was no like, oh, poor me, or oh, poor. And I'm just glad that we're moving past that and just letting people be happy for other people.
Yeah, it's like it's avoiding that idea or that trope of selfishly dwelling on something that, like, a forbidden fruit, if you will, is something that like you want and long for but can't have. Even no matter how
harmful.
Which is super harmful, right? Because no matter how you've prepared yourself in this way to expect something, expect a romance or expect a future with this other person just because you wanted it, to just sort of dissolve that and kind of understand that, like, oh, well, my understanding expectation isn't reality because this is the current reality. This is new information. Great. I'm going to move past it. Cool. You process it and you're like, great, cool, done. That scene from Stranger Things, I was so impressed by. Like, you're super right. It had a very similar moment to it, because the entire time you're getting this sort of budding romance between the two of them, and then when you see them, or when Bethany sees him in person, it's kind of like, oh, good for you. I think it's a bit less. I got a little less of it in this movie only because of my sort of pre-exposure to the gay love can't exist in this universe thing. Yeah. So the fact that Bethany's avatar in this was a man and Alex's avatar was also a man, because they've set this context where gay love is a joke and like queer existence is like bullshit, I got less of that towards the end. And so the payoff of like her seeing Alex in the real world, I was kind of like, oh, well, yeah, cool. You know, but I understand what you're saying, because it did 100% set it up to have that moment where she's like, she's thankful for what was and is moving on in the current present. She's accepting the present and just kind of saying thank you for it in that way, and being like, I'm happy that you're still in my life and I'm happy that we're here. Yeah.
But also I want to say like how fucking happy I am that we're doing this podcast together as like two people from different backgrounds, because like I said, like I would not have gotten that, like that read, and that's part of my own shitty thing that I'm trying to like, you know, like grow from. Like when you know better, you can do better, and you can see all of these things. And it's like, now that you like said all of that, I'm just like fuck, like that. That really sucks.
Think that's
and
a shitty
I see what they were
thing.
trying to do. Like, and this is why it's so important to have, you know, and I know we talk about this a lot, but to have diversity in like the writing room and stuff like that too. Because if there was a gay person, and there should have been like somebody that was versed in all of this, like if they're going to try to write Jack Black to be a woman, but to also be this, and then like there's a way to do that where it's not, like you said, the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
And that sucks. That sucks so bad.
Well, truly, because that's the whole conversation. Like, if you're going to create a narrative, or even like a sub narrative or a subplot, whatever, around the idea or the uncomfortable, because in this they made it seem very uncomfortable, the uncomfortable aspects of queer existence, of like same-sex attraction, or of genderqueer existence, or of non-binary existence, or of, if you're going to have a conversation about like gender at large, like y'all better get it right. You know what I mean? Or have somebody who knows, or who has that experience, who has lived that life. So like a queer person, like more specifically a gay person, a trans person, somebody who sees gender in a very specific way, or sees sexuality in a very specific way, especially when you're going to do this. Cause like, it just, again, it was a good movie and I did really like it 100%, but, they didn't like, it's either they didn't care or they intentionally chose to be shitty towards that community. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that goes back to like, you know, the dick jokes and things like that too. Like, I mean, a lot of that felt very real to me in terms of like my high school experience, right? Which was like 15 years ago now. Yeah. And so it's like, part of me was like, oh yeah, they nailed high school, but also like really tone deaf. Yeah. You know, and I think that I mean, like I said, the first time I watched it, I didn't get any of that. I was just like, oh, okay, great. And then upon second viewing, I was like, oh, actually and then once that lens was kind of like put in place, every time it would like appear, I would like try to really look at people's responses and like dialogue wise, how are these other characters bumping up against a conversation about femininity and a male presenting person? And like, it just never responded well. And I'm like, oh, well, that's dialogue. That's the script. Like telling the story, you're writing these things. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going really hard on it, but it just, I don't.
No, you should.
You know, I just don't think it did a good job with it. But who they did do a good job with is they cast Missy Pyle, who I think is a queer icon. I just love Missy Pyle so much. She was the gym coach.
Oh,
she was in like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Galaxy Quest. Like all of, you know, she's,
oh shit, yeah,
she's Missy Pyle. She's Missy fucking Pyle. I love Missy Pyle. But even for that small moment, I was like, oh yeah. So, because in my head, I'm like, well, they got the gay stuff wrong, but at least they had some queer representation, which I don't think she's gay or queer. I think she's straight. But just, I don't know why I'm presenting her as such a magnificent ally, but I really do love Missy Pyle, and that's kind of the extent of it. I think she's great.
I don't know. Is there anything else you have to say about this? Because I feel like the only things that I really wanted to say were just about how trauma adapts, and talk about how it was forcing us to see prejudice and the women. That's like basically all I want.
I've got a couple more things. They're not big. I just want to note them because I thought they're very funny. Bethany's Instagram post is just rolled out of bed, #NoFilter, #LoveMyLife. So stupid, but I wrote it down because I think it's funny. There was a gorgeous little Dave & Buster's product placement because it's like games and then games. Spencer is getting ready to go to school, and he goes to grab his keys or something, and it's like a Dave & Buster's water bottle. And I was like, oh, wow, look at that. So fun little product placement.
Really? I totally missed that.
It was so silly. And then there was one other thing. Did you see Hereditary?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so Alex Wolff, who plays Spencer in this, is in Hereditary. This came out a year before Hereditary. That movie is fucking phenomenal. It is one of my favorite movies. It's jarring. It's a real fucked up film. It's very scary, but it's really good. Alex Wolff plays the son in it. And in this movie, his mom says, what did she say? She's like, she reminds him to bring his EpiPen to his dad's after school. And there's a pivotal scene in Hereditary where his little sister forgets her EpiPen, and then like some real bad shit happens. And in my head, I was like, yeah, I think it's just complete coincidence. But in my head, I was like, wait a fucking second, y'all. Because again, it's like this key, like how often are we talking about EpiPens? But this key fucking prop, like they said it so confident. He's like, yeah, I won't forget it. A conversation about not forgetting his EpiPen. In the other movie, his little sister forgets her EpiPen and subsequently whatever, right? Like, I don't want to spoil anything but X, Y, and Z. So I was like, ooh, that's a really interesting thing. I don't think it means anything again, but I thought it was like a weird little canonic plot device, because I was like, what if Hereditary and Jumanji take place in the same universe? Anyways, that's the end of that. I'm not.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, speaking of like tie-ins and stuff, since we're like going down this tangent, so I want to say that I love that Alex finds refuge at the old parish place, at like the tree hut thing that Alan created while he was in Jumanji. And I love that Jumanji like had that, like it coded that into the game, if that makes sense, because like it could have just been left in the jungle, but they fucking brought that. The game decided to bring that, or maybe it was just so well hidden, right? Like within the world. But like I liked that because, again, going on the trauma thing and everything, right? Like you are able to, like, you find safety in like helping others and in like, you know, listening to advice or seeing what other people have gone through before you, that sort of thing, right? Like that sort of like connection, whatever. But
no, I understand.
It's like there's like a lot that like I feel like I'm not doing a really good job of articulating this week because we have been stuck inside for like a whole month.
Yes, we have.
I'm thriving. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I'm still just like getting used to it.
Yeah, no, I fully feel you. Yeah.
There was something else that I wanted. Oh, so you know, Jumanji was based off of a book, right?
Yes, and now I know again.
So Jumanji was based off of a picture book by Chris Van Allsburg, who wrote The Polar Express as well.
Oh, okay.
And he wrote the book because he was frustrated with Monopoly, because he would spend all this time playing it as a kid and then just have fake dollars. And he's like, well, wouldn't it be cool if like actual real stuff happened? Which is cool. So he wrote like a sequel to Jumanji that wasn't really a sequel, but it was like a space Jumanji. So you ended up in like space or whatever. And then there was a film adaptation of it. And it's called Zathura. The film adaptation was like a pseudo sequel that was created in 2005 and starred Josh Hutcherson and Kristen Stewart.
Zathura.
Yes. Yeah, Zathura. That's how you pronounce it. And it was literally, and it's in the same universe as Jumanji, literally only came to fruition because they wanted to sell books and movie tickets.
Hell yeah.
That was the whole thing, because they wanted to capitalize on Jumanji, even though it wasn't Jumanji.
No shit.
So this is not the first sequel. So maybe one day we should go back and do Zathura. Is that what it is? Zathura?
Zathura. I mean, I pronounce it Zathura. No shit. That's exactly wow.
Yeah.
So Walter and Danny, who anticipate a boring day, are shocked when they begin playing Zathura, a space-themed board game which they realize has mystical powers. When their house is shot into space with the help of an astronaut, the boys attempt to return home. I guess it's the same thing, but without death or possible death.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing, and Chris Van Allsburg also wrote that. Like, so it was also a book too. So
I love
wild,
that.
Right?
Kristen Stewart and Josh Hutcherson were the two leads. That is so fucking funny.
And so since we're on the subject of the author, he said, like, so he wrote it because of Monopoly, but the reason he decided to, like, have the books and everything take place inside of a house is because he wanted, there to be anarchy and chaos in the midst, and, like, stuff that was, like, uncontrollable inside of a house, which is, like, generally associated with, like, control and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
That is cool. Damn, I like that. I'm still tripping out on the Zathura
so that was pretty tight.
That's sick. Did I know that? No, I didn't. No, that's
Jumanji.
Space Jumanji. I mean, called. Maybe I'll watch that now. That sounds sick. I'm super on board for a Space Jumanji. Huh?
Do you know what Jumanji means?
No.
Jumanji means many effects in Sulu.
Many
Get
effects?
it? Because when you roll the dice, many different effects can happen. What?
That's cool. I like that.
Oh, man. We did it. We watched it. We watched the 1995 Jumanji. We watched Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle from 2017. What did we think about the first one? Who is it for?
Who is it for? The first Jumanji is for... who is it for? It was for the gays.
Did you say the gays? Only because
okay. It's for the queer community. It's for the gays because of Kristen Dunst and Robin Williams' legs. That's it. That's it. I stand by it. I'm gonna say, and honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not even gonna say the gays. I'm gonna just say me, Eric Lefebvre. It was a film for me. It was a little treat. It was just like a sweet little treat of a movie. Yeah. Who do you think it was for?
Oh my God. I think that it was for people suffering from grief and trauma. I'm going to go the serious route. I was trying to think of something funny, but I can't. I think it was people that need to see that it's okay to rely on other people and it's okay to be lost and scared and just be there together.
I'm on board with that. No, that's a great answer.
Did you like it?
I loved it. I loved it. Did you like it?
I will watch this. I think I've watched this like every 5 years or something. Like unintentionally. Great. Like it just like is on or it's like here and I'm like, oh yeah. But like I was looking up facts for this and I was like, they were like, oh, they sold the board game and stuff. I was like, fuck yeah, I would own one of those board games, right? Like, especially if it was like the cool ass, like wooden one, like it was like more of like a replica, right? Do you know how much the original one sold for on fucking eBay? Because this showed up in all my fucking searches and everything. $60,000. $60,000 plus dollars.
That's sick.
That's a lot of fucking money. Yo, yeah. I will fucking hand carve you one for $60,000.
Well, there was one I saw on eBay yesterday because I looked it up too. Because I was like, ooh, I kind of want this. It is a wooden hand carved one. I think it was going for like $450. It looked pretty authentic. It looked pretty solid. It looked cool. So I was like, hey, maybe. But $60,000. Good for them.
That's for the one that they used in the film. Yeah. That's wild.
Gosh. Must be nice to be rich, huh?
What's that money like?
I know. Truly.
What did you think of the 2017 one? Was it new and interesting or the same, progressive, regressive, and has the story evolved with today's ideals? Take it away.
I think it was new and interesting in its video game thing, and also the fact that it was like a story that takes place within the game, not outside of the game. Because the first one was like, we never saw what the inside of the game looks like. It was everything that was coming out of the game. Whereas this one was the opposite, going inside the game, seeing everything what exists inside Jumanji as opposed to what exists or what can come from Jumanji. So in that way, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool take. I thought it did a good job of generally, I guess, evolving with the ideals apart from the queer treatment of its characters. But yeah, progressive or regressive? I don't think it was either progressive or regressive. I think it was pretty even. I think it stayed the same. What do you think?
I thought it was new and like interesting, kind of like, oh, cool. But like, truthfully, I like the idea. Like, at first I was like, cool, in the video game and stuff like that, right? But again, just because it's new and interesting. But thinking about it, it's like, you know what? I think I like the uncertainty and the idea of things that you don't know coming out of a game and affecting your real life. You know, like, I mean, you die in the game, you die in real life in this one, right? But like, I like the other premise a little bit better. This one I was just like on board for like right away because I was like, cool, it's in a video game. All right. But I'm gonna say it was regressive because of all the shit that, you know, with Jack Black. But so it was regressive in the treatment of that subject, but I feel like it was progressive in the way that the female characters responded to each other. Again, mostly because of that one scene that like I'm probably like fucking making out to be a way bigger deal than it was. But like that to me, I think was really great and really interesting. And in the way that it forced the viewer through like, and I think we talked about this in a separate episode, how when you're dealing with these types of like calling out the audience and things like that, or like, you know, forcing them to reckon with their own biases and prejudices and stuff like that. Like there's a way to do that. And like, so Rocko's Modern Life did that by making the main character the person that is resistant to all of that. And you're like, no, like you suck. Like, come on. Right. By making Rocco that person that, and this one did it in another really smart way, I think, with, how the characters were allowed to call each other out and the way they did it and the timing and everything. I thought that was really cool. And I'd like to see more of that kind of stuff because we, like it or not, learn how to talk and communicate and stuff through film and
Oh, 100%. I completely agree with you. I loved the way that they did that. And we do. Yeah, we're so unconsciously receptive to a lot of these themes and like the way that characters in media interact. Like even if we're not like, well, no, I don't like we learn a lot from these written stories, these ideas of people, right? Like these tropes, a lot of it too is like we subconsciously take in and perform a lot of what we're seeing performed through media generally, whether or not we're aware of it.
And we decide what is normalized by that too, right?
Truly,
so,
yeah.
I feel like some of the behavior and some of the tropes that this film was addressing was done in a pretty regressive way. Or like you said, I mean, it might not have been regressive. It might have just been status quo, but like I've come to expect better of myself and of like the media and things that I consume. But yeah, like it's all, again, you know better, you do better. So do better. Damn it.
Yeah. 100%.
Who was it for?
I'm going to say this one was for the gamer community at large.
1,000%. It was for me.
Like you were saying earlier.
All the times that I have had to, in a video game, like wait around for some character that doesn't run as fast as me or that doesn't really serve a purpose but is just hanging around. Every time that I've tried to get more information out of an NPC and they just repeat the same fucking thing over and over.
Yeah.
Like whenever, God, like, there were so many, I wrote some of the video game things that I liked.
Like,
and
the cutscene moment.
The cutscene moment, yeah, that was really cute. How the map was being unlocked as you explored, just yes. And I did really love the commentary on how there was only the outfit choice for the game developers and this game Jumanji to put onto their female character because there was only one female character in this film. And of course there was like, 5 dudes or 4 dudes or whatever, 5 dudes.
Yeah.
But only one woman in this movie.
Yeah, no, 100%. It really hit on a lot of those video game tropes, and it made fun of and acknowledged a lot of those in a very fun way. That like even if you don't play games, like there's sort of it's like not necessarily grotesque exposition, but like exposition in a way that felt natural, in a way that was like, oh, this is what is happening in this game. Blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and anybody that's played a video game, which is most people at this point, right? No matter what kind of video game that you've played, I feel like you could resonate with some of what they were saying, you know, with just like picking a game. And I think it was also really smart that they used like an Atari or like a Nintendo, Super Nintendo type game for like, because it's like, okay, cool. Here's very simple character selection and here's this, like, so it felt like the barrier to entry wasn't as high as it could have been, like as it is. And like, you know, there's a lot of like anime that deals with like you die in the game, you die in real life because you're sucked in and you're here now, right? And like the barrier to entry for that can be a little bit high, like, you know, like Sword Art Online or Dot Hack or something, where if you're used to playing, you know, like MMO RPGs, then cool, this is like your shit, just eat it up, it's so good, even when it's bad, it's good, you know, because you just feel your struggles represented. And then this was just like very, it was light, it was nice.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Did you like it?
Yeah, it was, I felt like it was fine. I felt like it was fun. I don't know if I'd watch it again.
Okay.
But I might, because I really like Karen Gillan and dance fighting was cute. Yeah. What about you?
I liked it. I mean, apart from all of like the shit I talked about it, I did like it. I did think it was a good and fun movie generally. I thought it was interesting. It was cool. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I would say if you like her and you just want like more of that character, not necessarily the same story, I would love to get your input on the sequel.
Oh, okay.
To this, because she's in it and she's great. She's like one of my favorite parts of the second one. Her Aquafina is in the second one also. She's great.
Oh, is she? I fucking love her.
Yeah, she's in it. She's really good. And so is Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito's in the second one too, and he's fucking fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So I say I don't think it's a good movie generally, but for the most part, I enjoyed it, apart from all of the problematic bullshit that it carried. So I would like to hear your opinion on it.
I will watch it and I will let you know. Cool. I think that's it.
I think we covered all of our bases.
Awesome. Bases are covered. The game has been beaten. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We hope, again, that everybody is staying safe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, want to be a guest, I don't know, whatever, write into us at nostalgiapodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on all of the social media, mostly Instagram and Twitter. That is kind of where we live, I guess. We'd love to hear from you, please. And if you haven't already, please rate and review us, and we will send you our eternal gratitude. And I don't know, maybe stickers, maybe shirts, maybe we'll have some of that soon at some point. I personally really want a shirt or a sticker that says "Stay cute and critical." I think that would be really cute.
Yeah, I think that would be super cute.
If you want one, let me know. Also, okay. Special thanks to David Tricero for providing technical support, Danny Barkley for editing our podcast. My goodness, you're a wizard. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Also, thank you, Eric, for being great.
Thank you, Jess. This is a treat and a joy, and I love doing this.
Yeah. And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical. Bye-bye.